Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham, and this is the one show where you don't have to worry about being judgmental because we'll do it all for you. We're going to go straight to you, Jay.
Oh, yeah, right.
And you're the first man up, and it says here that you're going to talk about some bloke who's known as the Lamborghini lawyer.
They're acting like thugs after that man has kicked the young man who was posing no threat. His mother was sitting beside him. The woman police officer threatened to taser the person who's making the video and capturing their crimes.
So, of course, this is a guy who said this man was posing no danger. When we saw the piece of video which then followed, this guy is punching people, like he's Roberto Duran. He looks like he knows what he's doing. He looks like he's a professional boxer. So the idea that he was saying, this guy was just trying to look after his mother, he wasn't posing any threat, absolute and utter rubbish.
He would like to see this country under Sharia law.
Would he?
He said.
Yeah, well, let's see, because he came on to TalkTV a couple of days later, and this is what happened.
I do not promote violence. Unlike TalkTV, I said I have been behind the de-escalation of the whole situation. I urged protesters at Rochdale police station to go home. Everything that TalkTV has said, I'm doing the opposite. I'm the good guy here. Remember that.
So he was claiming that everything that TalkTV was alleging was wrong. It turned out everything that he was claiming was actually wrong, and he's now no longer the lawyer for the family. And they brought in Amar Anwar, who's a slightly more serious guy from Scotland, to represent them. But, I mean, the whole case is a laughing stock.
Have those two been charged?
Not yet,
no.
Why have they not been charged?
9 days after that.
Well, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Because people think they haven't been charged because the police are dead scared, as is the CPS,
exactly.
for the resulting riot that might take place if they do
Well, if
get
there's a
charged.
riot takes place by people who support those two thugs,
Yeah.
then I suggest they all get arrested.
Well, they should be treated the same way as the other riots that have been taking place.
Exactly.
Around
Here's why Akhmed Yakoob dropped this case, right? He saw it. He's a race grifter. He's been doing it his whole life. He stood as a parliamentary candidate on a pro-Palestine ticket. He stood in the West Midlands mayoral race on the same ticket. Did quite well.
Yeah. He got like 39,000
He spotted
votes.
what he saw the original video. He thought, I can do something with this, and whipped up this big race row, sectarian row. Muslim mob descend on Rochdale police station. He's, in the limelight, loving it, everything, doing what he does best, causing disquiet and discomfort.
Yeah.
And then the second video comes out, and he looks at that, and all his mates who like to do all this agitation, they go, this isn't going to work. Those two guys deserve everything they get.
One bit of good news.
Go on.
Anjem Chowdhury's been locked up for life.
For 28 years minimum, But about bloody time, if you don't mind me saying so. Chloe, over to you.
So
Sport.
we have to put the Olympics in for Plank of the Week. I mean, it has been an abomination right from the start. I mean, the opening ceremony, that absolute mockery of the Last Supper. I mean, I'm not even a Christian, but I'm annoyed by this. I think it's absolutely abhorrent.
Yeah, they had this rather large woman, which seems an odd
hang on,
an
we
odd
don't know
image.
that she was a woman.
Well, we may not. But she's
can't
pretending.
assume her gender.
Well, she's
It's 2024.
She's portraying a woman. Let's put it that way.
Does she accurately represent a sporting event?
I
No,
wouldn't have
she's
thought
not
so.
an athlete. The Olympics is
Not
about
unless it's
sport.
the Fat Bastard of the Year award.
No.
So I don't think it is.
I mean,
That's worse than you, Kevin.
the Olympics is about sport. It's not
missed that
about
one.
drag queens. It's not about obese ladies or
Right,
men who
bearded
knows what she
ladies.
is.
It's a circus show, isn't it? It's a freak show.
I know. The guy who put together this opening ceremony, he is now coming out and claiming that it has nothing to do with the Last Supper.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a lie. But even if he is telling the truth, this is still an absolute abomination.
Yeah.
How they've just they've shown the West to be an absolute laughing stock.
Right.
Yeah.
Look at the opening ceremonies that they had in Russia, in China. They were beautiful.
Yeah.
They were incredible. They were civilized.
And in 2012 here.
This
Left-wing rubbish.
This is what the West puts on. They're showing us
Left-wing
absolute
rubbish.
buffoons. And we've had all sorts of other stuff going on at the Olympics. We've got just had in the boxing match, a fight ended after, I think, 46 seconds, where they had... there's different reporting as to whether this was a trans woman or a woman who had abnormally high testosterone levels.
Or an intersex person.
Failed
like
to
that,
meet
right?
the testosterone test. yet was cleared to compete
Certainly
anyway.
looks like a bloke. I've seen him. You know.
And now this is boxing. This is no joke, right? Beating someone
Yeah.
up. This is not a joke. That is
Licensed
incredibly
beating up of women
How
in
did
a
we,
ring.
Insane.
how did we get into
this
such
point.
a state
Yeah.
where everything's got to be equal? Nothing is equal. None of us think we're equal.
This is not equality,
it's not
though,
about
allowing
equality
these
at
people
all.
to beat
Or
women up.
diverse.
Some
It's
of us
not
are
about
more
equal-
equal than
But
others.
the question is, how do we get here?
The opening
This-
ceremony is never really about the sport. Like, that's for sure. It's to represent the country.
Yes.
And if France wants to represent itself in that way, go ahead. We had a big thing about the NHS for our 2012. I'm not sure that's got a huge amount to do with the Olympics, but there you go. It's supposed to represent what is best about that country. If France chooses that
Yeah.
to be the best,
But I'm gonna
okay.
show you a picture
Where
now.
the shock and horror comes from is, like you said, things like the boxing, things like having someone who's on the child sex offenders register,
Yeah, the Dutch
playing
child
in the Olympics.
rape.
The International Olympics Committee has always been about the International Olympics Committee. It's not been about the athletes. It's not been about.
Well, the athletes are all sleeping on these cardboard beds.
Yeah, right.
Instagram and TikTok is full of athletes showing videos of these horrendous
and it's been
cardboard
raining
beds.
consistently, like almost non-stop
Yeah.
since the beginning.
And they ran
that was
out
the other
of,
thing. The
they
opening
ran out
ceremony,
of food
everybody
for the
was
athletes
soaked.
as well.
Don't you think a city like Paris might have been a little bit shy about mocking religious imagery, given what happened in Charlie Hebdo? What they decided is it's fine to mock, to
Yeah.
take the piss out of Christianity, but don't touch holy Islam. Oh my
No.
God.
Also,
it's just
if they were-
unbelievable.
Also, if they were hoping to represent France, did they mean to show this picture, which we're about to look at, which is a man who apparently is a woman, but appears to be showing one of his bollocks, which
that's
appears
a
to be
horrible word.
sticking out.
It's
Do you know what's
sticking out-
lovely about that? There's some
sticking out.
children. There's some children next to that
But he's
bollock.
got a ball coming out of his trousers. I don't know how
bollocks.
he's
It's-
managed to do that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they didn't mean to do that. I mean,
Testically well endowed.
yeah, well, not really.
This is meant
anyway,
to be a child-friendly
I know.
He's only
opening
got one.
ceremony.
What is it, Jeremy Kyle?
I know. That's not very nice. Below the belt. Now, let's have a look at what Bishop Robert Barron had to say.
Some of the things that were said. Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. Give me a break. So we have a group of drag queens cavorting in a kind of sexually provocative way, clearly an imitation of Da Vinci's Last Supper, which presents to the world the Last Supper of Jesus. And no disrespect was meant. You think anyone takes that seriously? I love this. We tried to celebrate community tolerance. Christians were offended because it was offensive, and it was intended to be offensive. So please don't patronize us.
And they did later apologise, despite the fact that all the lefties, of course, were saying, oh, isn't it great? Isn't it eccentric? You know, France are so eccentric. What a great country. Isn't it cool?
Yeah, but it wasn't
You know.
representative of France. It was
No.
representative of Macron and Paris.
Yes. Yeah.
Paris is just one other liberal elite city.
I
Could have
know.
been New York, could have been London, could have been anywhere.
Yeah.
It was
I
not
know a few
representative of
people-
France.
I'm just going to interrupt him. There's no
Yeah,
other
you
way
just
to
have
do it.
to. Otherwise, it takes over.
I know a few French people who were absolutely shocked. by
Embarrassed.
it, and embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'd have been embarrassed if I was French.
Sacre
I'm
bleu.
embarrassed as just a member of
Yeah.
the West.
Yeah. I know.
Putin,
But I
they're
still
all
go
going
back
to
to
be
the
watching
question.
this laughing at
How
us.
do we get to this stage where the minority, and a minority of our minority, if you're talking about trans people, get to such a violent situation?
I know, it's
Why?
mad. It's absolutely mad. Anyway, we've got lots to get on with. So, Kevin, over to you.
Oh, gosh.
You've got old Rachel Thieves. I think.
Rachel Thieves, the granny freezer. She is not going to be paying the winter fuel allowance to millions of freezing pensioners, shivering pensioners throughout the winter because apparently I've discovered a £20 billion black hole in public finances. I had no idea. Liar! You knew very well.
Yes.
It was at the office
That could
of
have been
Bo-
Rachel Reeves.
The OBR revealed that before the election. She knew full well, and so they're not going to get their winter fuel allowance. The government's going to save £1.1 billion, and then it's going to spend something like £31 billion on a load of green claptrap and pay rises for working from home public sector workers that Labour just love. Plus, they're going to give 22% to the junior doctors.
The doctors.
But if you're old, you can do one as far as Labour.
And the
are
reason we
concerned.
know that they were lying is there's a clip of Keir Starmer, actually, from just before the election back in April, saying exactly that, saying, "Oh, is it right that the Tories are considering dumping the winter fuel allowance in order to save the £24 billion black hole that they've got on the side of the government?" So they've even admitted it. But here's Rachel Reeves making the announcement.
But today I am making the difficult decision that those not in receipt of pension credit or certain other means-tested benefits will no longer receive the winter fuel payment from this year onwards.
About Cruella de Vil. I mean, this is your area,
so weird,
Georgie.
yeah, because I was watching, I'm a personal financial analyst, so I was watching it for anything like that came up, right? And it was like the only thing that came up. It was just such a weird one to pick. Hey, pensions. I think they did it
Why target pensions?
I think
because they don't vote Labour.
They're taking that away and they're giving money to countries that we have no reason to give money to. They're spending money on illegals. Apparently you're not able to call them migrants. I call them criminals coming in on the boats. They're paying millions.
They've renamed
for that.
them, haven't they?
Irregular migrants.
Irregular
They're
asylums,
criminals.
the arrivals,
We've seen from the demonstrations that happened last week how many people want to get Britain back. They want Britain back. Well, that's a good slogan, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want Britain back.
Yeah.
And it has to happen, otherwise there is going to be terrible trouble. We can't do this to our pensioners and then give billions of pounds to other countries for their green issues.
How can she talk about, I've discovered this £20 billion black hole in the public finances, and then Labour announced £31.5 billion for spending, mostly on green claptrap. And did you notice when she's making that speech, a lot of people did notice, she was speaking much quicker than she usually is, looking very furtive, like this, blah, 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 blah. That's because she was lying and she knew it.
Yeah, of course.
Well, there's no excuse whatsoever for not knowing about this 20 billion black hole. I mean, if she didn't know about it, that makes her look like an idiot because she was the shadow chancellor. Her job was to look at the country's finances on a regular basis. She had all of the access.
The OBR came out and said we were not given the correct information. Now, whether you believe that or not, hopefully an investigation will find that out. But be that as it may, she's basically using it as an excuse to raise taxes and make different decisions.
As I said, they already identified that there was a 24 billion black hole back in April. So they couldn't have now suddenly got into government in July and said we didn't know it was there.
And
they knew it was there in April.
They've told us time and time again, the Tories are the ones who give us false promises and don't live up to them, which is true, fair. But they are clearly showing that they are exactly the same. There was a great compilation clip put up of all of the times that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have said, we won't raise taxes, we won't raise taxes, we won't raise taxes. And now she said, we're probably going to have to raise taxes in the autumn statement.
I know. Shocking, isn't it? Let's move on. Georgie Frost.
Yeah, well, it's sort of linked to that where I'm going with it, because it's going to be the Junior Doctors Committee of the BMA.
Our old friends at the BMA.
Particular reference to Robert Lawrenson, the co-chair of this group.
The boy.
Now, what she announced in the statement was that there's going to be an agreement, or they've had to come to an agreement for a pay rise for junior doctors, which is going to go to a vote. So the BMA have agreed with the government and with West Streeting that they've got this figure of 22% to be over the 2 years between 2023 and 2025. 22%. BMA agreed this. However, just straight afterwards, Robert Lawrenson came out and basically just trashed his own deal.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that this has been going on, strike action, since March 2023. We've had 11 industrial actions, 44 days of strike.
Millions and billions of operations.
1.5 billion, 1.5 million hospital appointments and doctors' appointments have had to be cancelled at a time when we are already overloaded. So junior doctors putting pressure on their colleagues, basically. The idea that they will not accept this, and what he's saying is basically we're going to wait. It's so cynical. This all came out in some WhatsApp chats, that they're going to wait, not now, because Labour have quite a strong hand, but until Labour slip up, maybe in the new year, and they're going to start with a long haul of strike action again. This is your own deal that you agreed to have put to your members to vote on it. And there's now a WhatsApp, there's now a social media campaign to encourage junior doctors to say no because they want that 35% that they say that their pay is down by since 2008 in real terms. Ignoring the fact the IFS say you're using the wrong inflation measure, the figure is closer to 11 to 16%.
Yeah, of course.
No one denies that they probably do need a bit of a bump in pay.
I do.
35%
I deny it.
is an enormous amount.
I deny it.
And people are suffering so badly. So it's just so frustrating that it's like this cynical kind of
Well, they've said basically it's a start, and we'll take it, but we'll want more in the new year. It's ridiculous.
It's got them over the barrel, and what are other unions going to do when they look at this? We're at a time we're getting inflation. It's really.
But this is the other problem. The government is giving money hand over fist to anyone that asks for it. So what do you think is going to happen next? Next year they're going to come back and ask for more.
Exactly, and not just them, the train drivers, not just them. Everyone who works for the public sector is going to be asking for these. Where does this money come from? It comes from us.
And who dies because of these strikes? Oh, I know, patients.
Yeah, patients.
Doctors that go on strike and they kill patients.
Yeah.
I mean,
Great,
I don't want to have a go at
isn't
doctors because, you know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for doctors. But there are some doctors, obviously, more politically motivated than medically
Well, there's loads of doctors
motivated.
who are not even in the BMA. And these junior doctors are the sort of hardcore of the Marxist sort of wing
I would say a large
of the
majority
doctors'
do not
union.
want to go.
Get rid of the BMA. They don't need to have a union, a representation, and let's make it a little more.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
by the way, it's a two-bit left-wing union that calls itself this pompous name, the British Medical Association.
I know.
They're just trades unions.
Exactly right.
They're
exactly
behaving
right.
like absolute children. I mean, no compromise whatsoever.
I know.
I mean, I agree with
It's
Georgie
pathetic.
that maybe doctors need a bit of a pay rise, but at least compromise a bit, meet in the middle, because as Kevin's pointed out, there's a real human cost to this.
Yeah, of course.
So many people. I want them to go, and rather than strike outside the hospital, go to the homes of the people who are waiting desperately.
Yeah, they don't go on strike. They don't go on picket lines. They go on holiday. They go on holiday. They make sure that when they have their strike days, it makes it to a long weekend or goes into an Easter break or something like that. It's absolutely disgusting what they do.
It's
Anyway,
so
we've got to stop because we've got loads more plankery to get on with, including coming up the RAF are going to be getting the neck from James. Then we're going to also be talking, of course, about Hugh Edwards. That was a big story this week. More coming up after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Well, I tell you what, there has been one massive Plank of the Week this week, and it's got to be Hugh Edwards. But I mean, Hugh Edwards, a man who was what would you describe him as? The sort of flagship commentator of modern Britain. The man who was there when every single thing that happened under his watch. You know, when the Queen was at Prince Philip's funeral. It was his words that you heard. When Prince Philip died, it was his words that you heard. When the Queen died, it was his words, it was his face that you saw. And he has had the most God almighty come down this week because he's pleaded guilty, for anyone who's been sleeping under a rock, to basically child porn offences. And he's basically admitted to being a paedophile. But I'm not going to make Hugh Edwards a plank because, I mean, obviously it's a very serious story. But who I am going to make a plank are all of the media personalities who attacked The Sun when The Sun first broke the story last year, and they were absolutely pilloried by the likes of Emily Maitlis, John Sopel, David Yelland, former Sun editor, and Lewis Goodall. Rather laughably, they do a show called The News Agents. You know, I don't think they've got about as much news now as a mouse, and they couldn't run a newsagent shop if you paid them. But have a look at this clip. This is what happened when they were talking about the Sun stories about Hugh Edwards.
Literally said on their newspaper that the top BBC star who paid child for sex pictures could be charged by cops and face years in prison. That is a Sun headline. If that doesn't suggest criminality...
That is exactly what they are pointing
And they had
towards.
a denial from the young person, their so-called child, and they chose not to run the denial. Do you think there's a way back to the BBC for Hugh?
Yes.
David Yelland, do you think there's a way back for Hugh to the BBC? I mean, the amount of vitriol these people poured, not only on The Sun, but on tabloid newspapers in general. Kevin, you'll know this. I saw you talking with Ali Ross about it this week. You know, absolutely disgraceful behaviour from these complete and utter bozos who got it completely wrong. All of them. John Sopel also elsewhere was interviewed in which he said that, you know, Hugh Edwards is, you know, an interesting guy. You know, he might have a slightly complicated life.
Andrew Marr said we're all human.
Yeah.
So some of those kids in the porn.
But Yelland later on in that clip talks about how, you know, lots of people have got, you know, unusual relationships and lots of people have different partners and lots of people have, you know, peccadillos in their personal lives. We shouldn't be looking into them. Well, this guy has been looking at pictures of children aged 7 and aged 9 involved in sexual activity. I'm sorry to have to say that on this show, but he's a danger to society, and he needs to go to jail.
I agree.
So what? Listen, those programmes, that programme, have you ever seen it? I watched it once.
The newsagents, no, I can't put myself through that.
It's absolute crap.
It's garbage.
No, it's absolute
garbage.
Crap. There are 4
I can
people
tell.
there, John Sopel, Emily Maitlis, 2 of the most arrogant broadcasters, and John Sopel doesn't like me much either, so I don't care.
Right.
But it is so patronising and condescending, that programme, by a bunch of people who think they know what's best for all of us.
Yeah.
Get rid of the BBC.
Yeah, well, they left the BBC, though, and now they do this thing independently.
Yeah, but it's done for the BBC.
But,
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's LBC. Owen Jones. Let's not forget our friend Owen Jones.
Oh, yes.
This is what he tweeted. The Sun is a disgusting rag for what they have done, and they have to pay for what they've done to Hugh Edwards. They tried to destroy someone's life with false claims of illegality involving a minor. We know there was no criminality. Why don't you lot just shut up? You absolute moron.
You're talking about Owen Jones. He's
Well, this is the same as that lot.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of halo-polishing, virtue-signalling morons
who are absolutely sure that they're right.
automatically assume that the villain of this story is the Messenger, the awful Sun newspaper.
Right.
It wasn't. It was that vile little paedophile, Hugh Edwards.
Yeah. And also some people have said, you know, it doesn't say much about the judgment of people like Sopel and Maitlis, who say that they've known this man for many, many years and they never knew that he was a paedophile. Oh, really? Well, what does that tell you about their judgment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I believe that we should presume innocence until proven guilty. So I wouldn't be behind an allegation coming out and someone absolutely insisting absolutely 100% must be guilty. But on the other hand, I do not...
No, but they didn't do that. But they attacked the Sun for writing the story. That's what they did.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I'm getting to. Is people like Owen Jones who insist innocence before proving guilty, insisting they must be right. How do you know? You're not the one investigating it. You haven't seen all the evidence.
Right.
Step back a minute and just let journalists do their job.
Exactly right. Georgie, you're very quiet.
Oh, I
He's
think,
angry.
No, I think a lot of this goes to the kind of heart about how, especially at the BBC, we have these stars, and it always comes out afterwards that people knew, yet nobody does anything about it. And it's like watching those people talk about him as though it couldn't possibly be Hugh.
Right.
You know, and this is what allows this to happen. We've seen it so many times. And who's the innocents? It's the children that are involved in this.
And also
You've got to take the sheen off of these stars.
Yes, but the BBC have got lots to answer for here, and I think that Tim Davie might lose his job over this. I know Kevin doesn't
He won't.
I think he should. But one of the reasons he should is that the police went to the BBC in November of last year to tell them that they'd arrested Hugh Edwards for serious criminal offences regarding child porn.
I agree, but if you're the Director General of the BBC, you're allowed to get away with anything. You just stumble from scandal to cock up to chaos. That's all that
guess
they
what they decided to do? They decided, I want to know. We'll give him a pay rise.
So there's something weird going on. Why is our state broadcaster that we have to pay 170 quid a year to watch their crap woke programmes, why is it a protective haven for vile paedophiles? Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, and now Hugh Edwards. It's weird.
It is.
That is what it is. It's weird. And the people knew about it. They knew about Savile. They knew about Harris. They knew about Edwards, and they covered up for them. What kind of
other news organisations?
I have to say. Hang on, just one
media organisations where that sort of thing happens.
Well, it's the BBC. The BBC is a weirdo organisation.
They certainly seem to have three. They certainly seem to have had three of the biggest. Go on.
I knew Jimmy Savile because I worked at Yorkshire TV and lived in Yorkshire for quite a lot of time. I knew Jimmy Savile reasonably well. He appeared on programmes I did quite often. I thought he was strange. I didn't mix with him socially, but I had no idea. He also conned the Prime Minister,
groomed the nation.
Groomed the nation, if you want. And all I'm actually saying is that I think quite a lot of people do not, unless you're,
but the
into that
BBC knew because they investigated him and they killed the investigation. Newsnight had it all and they killed it because they had a special edition of Jim Will Fix It with Shane Ritchie. They knew. Well, they had an investigation ready to go on Newsnight and they killed it because they didn't want to desecrate the memory of wonderful Jimmy. That's the weirdo organisation we're talking about.
Listen, what I'm trying to say is if you know some of these people, it doesn't necessarily mean you know what they would do.
And that you would never think that. As a normal right-thinking person, you do not think that people that you know are engaged in these sorts of activities. Now, what we're talking about here with Jimmy Savile and with Hugh and with that, and Rolf Harris or whatever, is the most depraved. But I'm talking about the protection of just bullying, really awful behaviour that you see from stars and celebrities and those sorts of things. We've seen it time and time again.
I didn't mean that earlier, honestly.
Yeah.
Well,
but the point about the Hugh Edwards case is that there were plenty of people inside the BBC who knew, because people had complained about Hugh Edwards. People had actually said that he had sent them messages in the middle of the night, that people that he was working with, who were his underlings, had felt a bit uncomfortable. So they knew about all of that, and they did nothing about it. And that's where I think the problem.
The thing is, these organisations will cover up horrendous scandals like this just to save their reputation, which is incredibly selfish, given that they will save their reputation at the cost of children's livelihoods.
Absolutely right.
It's absolutely disgusting. Have a bit of humility, accept the sting to your reputation, and do what's best for the children involved.
And don't actually get involved in child pornography, I think would probably be another possible piece of advice to anyone who works at the BBC, because they obviously need the advice. James, let's talk about the RAF.
Right, OK. Well, the RAF have decided to scrap, Squadron 214, I think it is. They're called the Crusader Squadron. And they did amazing things for us during the Second World War and are still doing it. They're very into keeping an eye on what's going on, and it's quite a secret squadron. But they were called the Crusaders. And now the heads of the RAF wish to scrap the name.
Yes.
Why? Well,
is it offensive?
I'll tell you why. Because it's offensive to some people who might find Crusader offensive. Well, if you find that offensive and you want to live in a country where their national flag is a Crusader flag, I suggest you go away.
But is this also not a case of people saying people might be offended by it, so we better change the name? It's not because anybody's complained about it, not because anybody's come to them and said, you know, this is absolutely offensive to me, therefore you must change
But you
the
know
name.
what's happening with the Ministry of Defence at the
They
moment.
fear that Muslims will be offended because
but what
the
I'm saying
Crusaders
is that,
went to Muslim
But what I'm
countries.
saying is that they may not have actually had anybody complain about it. They
No,
might have
exactly.
decided,
But
just
that's
in
what
case.
This is fear of Muslims again.
Can I make a point here? That Islamists, they're the ones who want Sharia law and all that sort of stuff. Horrible. Don't want to have anything to do with them. Don't live here, because why would you want to? But people who follow the Muslim faith, people who just get on, all the people I know, because I love curry. Sorry, I know it's a bit, no, but listen to what I'm going to say.
Right.
Most Indian restaurants I know have got Christmas decorations up before the rest of us. They're up in November. They celebrate it. They're not offended by it.
No.
So why this diversity rubbish that is being poured into the MOD?
Because it's being run by activists and people who want to cause trouble. Let's have a look at what Nigel Farage has to say about this particular story.
Their nickname is the Crusaders, but a senior boss in the Royal Air Force has decided that name now has to be dropped because it might cause offence to Muslims. I wonder whether in Saudi Arabia they're bending to our culture and our way of life. I wonder even more deeply why we are literally giving in on virtually everything. Tell me I'm wrong.
It's a pretty good point.
You're not wrong.
I don't think he is wrong.
No.
But that's the end of the, presumably that's the end of the name. I mean, it turns out as well, because I looked into this a little bit, that they did fly, I think, during the Second World War, and maybe even earlier than that, and do missions over what is now Gaza and what is now called Palestine. So I don't know whether it's got anything to do with that as well, because as soon as you see anything to do with Palestine, you go, oh my God.
It's a terror of offending Muslims. It's ridiculous. If it was 1939 now, we'd have probably said as a nation, let Hitler invade because we don't want to be accused of Germanophobia.
Yes.
I mean, that's how we've changed as a nation. We used to have a backbone, now we're
But I think
We started with
absolutely
appeasement,
right
please.
in what he
Come
said.
on. We started with appeasement in the Second World War. We started with appeasement in the Second World War.
I don't want to
That
get
was
into
James
starting to have
Lynn's attitude.
conversations. It's a very weird conversation.
But we digress.
Can I just remind
Exactly.
you guys that this is meant to be a comedy show, before we get any further. We're not having very many laughs. Chloe, bring us some laughs, for God's sake.
Well, we've just seen Nigel Farage, and speaking of him, I want to nominate the Chesterfield Pride organisers who decided that at an LGBTQIA plus however many letters event, that they should have a throw the milkshake on Farage competition.
Oh, how funny.
Well, they've got a cardboard cutout, and they think, because he's such an evil, homophobic, transphobic, racist bigot, that we must all throw milkshakes on him. And Nigel responded saying, this just shows the liberal intolerance that we have in this country. I think that it looked awful for the left, because it just shows what they have come to now.
Why are they so violent?
I know, it's just
more violent
disgusting.
than
And this is also what, a couple of weeks after Donald Trump was shot at by somebody who wanted to kill him.
Well, the thing is, so you look at the Trump assassination and you look at this, and there's something in common, right? Is that the mainstream media have painted out both of these people to be, as I just said, the evil, racist, homophobic, transphobic, evil people, right? Which, we've just been talking about Hitler. These are some of the ways that people would describe Hitler, and people put them on a par.
Oh, no, they put them on a parallel. They have.
Yeah, I was seeing, there was a YouTuber who did some street interviews asking what people thought of the Trump assassination attempt, and one guy was like, Trump and Hitler, two peas in a pod, same to me.
And many of the Democrats who are Democrat supporters and voters said it's a shame they didn't get him.
So this is why people are doing, for example, these Pride events, throw the milkshake on Farage, because they think that he is someone like Hitler. They think that he is genuinely evil. Whereas if they looked away from the headlines and actually listened to what this guy has to say, they'll realise that's not the case. Just a guy that wants a bit of law and order, bit of basic border control, not crazy sky-high taxes, simple stuff.
But it's the fact that they make light of it. Whereas if it was the other way around, if you had a sort of, some kind of, Reform Party summer fete, and they had a sort of shoot the bullseye on the head of Keir Starmer, can you imagine what they'd say?
Like, every year we burn some poor thing, guy.
Down at Lewis.
Had you not said about making this funny, I probably wouldn't have made this comment, but oh, come on, lighten up. Like, it's a fest. They're throwing milkshake at him. Look, it's very different to draw a parallel to Donald Trump, who got, an assassination attempt. I do not agree with throwing eggs or throwing anything at political figures or public figures at all. But come on.
No, but it's not so much about... No, but it's not so...
milkshake. As long as it's proper milkshake.
I would say...
It is a waste of milkshake.
Well, I would say, actually, take that point that it would be funny, but then why would they not put up, Layla Moran?
Maybe next year they're going to put
that works for me. I'll have a go at that.
Why can you not throw one over
Donald Trump?
Imagine, but if you'd put up Yvette Cooper, let's throw something on Yvette Cooper, you wait and see how little sense of humour they have.
Lefties need their pantomime villains. Being left-wing is all about, I'm lovely, I'm a wonderful person, I care about people. You're right-wing, you're horrible. You're horrible because you're right-wing. And that's why they treat... People like Nigel Farage and Donald Trump are completely dehumanised to left-wingers because they are just they're pantomime villains. Let's throw stuff at them.
The thing
Simple
is,
as that.
A Pride event should not be political. I know so many people who are gay who used to go to Pride events.
And they hate it now.
But now they won't go anywhere near it because it's become so left-wing. I know plenty of gay people who are on the right and support the Reform Party.
Well, I have loads of gay listeners,
right,
who get in touch with me all the time and say they're sick to death of this LGBTQ plus whatever it is, because they've hijacked the whole movement. And there's plenty of right-wing gay people. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've got a lot of gay friends and they all voted Brexit, I'll tell you.
Right.
And they're just completely homeless now. They've been completely kicked out of their own movement.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. Now, we're going to take a little break once again, because coming up, we're going to talk about those eco-terrorists. Everybody's got some words for them. And the City of London is getting it in the neck as well. It's all coming up next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're getting down to the wire on this. We've got 3 more to do, and then I'm going to decide who's going to win it. And there we are. So, over to you, Kevin, for Just Stop Oil.
Well, so I win then. It's Just Stop Oil. They're at it again. They were found at Gatwick Airport covering the floor in orange paint. Why? And they sat across a sort of passenger departure gate.
I know.
And basically all the passengers just stepped over them going, wankers, as they carried on. It was, of course, think about Just Stop Oil.
Why didn't they kick that stuff out of the way?
This is them at Heathrow.
So they did it at Heathrow as well. So this isn't working because people are just, look at it, it's pathetic.
That's Terminal 5, I know that.
It's
'cause I've been there quite a
pathetic,
few
isn't
times.
it? I mean, and, don't disrupt people's holidays.
No.
Let them go on holiday, for God's sake. And why are they always called things like Phoebe? Those idiots who got jailed a couple of weeks ago, you had that sort of old geezer, Richard Hallam, Roger Hallam. But listen to the names of two of the women that got 4 years. One is Cressida Gethin.
Yes.
She's the one that her mother said, but you won't be able to go to her brother's funeral. Who fucking
No,
cares?
his wedding.
And your funeral should have been funeral.
Yeah.
And,
you don't swear on this show, by the way.
And the other one was, that we did last week when I was hosting it, Lucia Whitaker Diabra. I mean, who are these people? They're so middle class, aren't
Well,
they?
the thing is, these are people who are out of touch with your normal working class Brit who works all year to save up so that they can have 1 week
it's
away.
outrageous.
Right? I understand you going after celebrities who jet around almost every other day. They're on a plane, they're putting loads of fumes in the air. Fine, but your normal working class Brits...
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sorry, I don't think that anybody has the right to disrupt what anybody does. It's a free world. If I want to fly on a private jet to go somewhere, or even if somebody like, Hugh Grant wants to go and fly on a private jet, who I don't particularly like, I'm not going to have a go at him for doing it, unless he's telling everybody else
Exactly
not to.
right.
Yeah,
the
but
hypocrisy of
all
it.
I'm saying is, maybe that's your point of view, but there are plenty of people who will think, OK, people do need to cut down on their carbon emissions. And if that
I couldn't care less.
If that's the
Why do they
case,
need to cut down
go
on
after
their carbon
go after people. I'm just saying, if you are of that point of view, go after people who are actually putting tons of fumes in the air. Don't go after your normal
don't go
working
after
class
people at all. This is my point. There's no reason for just the world to exist, right?
It's you can't argue with them. You can't say, but when they stop the M25, but there's people getting to hospital. There's people going to die. Ambulances. You cannot reason because they'll say, but. Everybody's going to die if we don't stop oil. It's a religion, and this is where the left has become.
It's absolutely mad. And they're all complaining now because they're being sent to prison for quite a long time, which I'm very much in favour of, right? But one of the people who was involved in the Heathrow episode was Phoebe Plummer, who, of course, is somebody that we've seen many times before. Phoebe Plummer is the very wealthy daughter of a hedge fund manager who went to Eastbourne School, which costs about £41,000 a year. Let's have a look at her telling us why she did it.
We live in an age of fools. We know what this means, that continuing to burn fossil fuels is murderous and it is racist. I refuse to be complicit in that.
Tell you what, Phoebe, sack your hairdresser. God, what a mess. She looks like a haystack.
By the way, this is a woman who's already been found guilty of throwing soup over the Van Gogh painting earlier in the year.
She's a mad moron.
So she's going to be sentenced to probably jail time in October, but she's still showing she has absolutely no remorse, no regrets. She's back at Heathrow Airport with the orange paint.
Do you know what it's
stopping
saying?
everybody having a good time.
That school she went to at 41 grand a year.
Eastbourne School.
What a waste of money.
What a waste of money.
Right to protest, all for it, but not if you're going to ruin other people's lives when you do it. That's what's wrong about this.
Stand on the corner of the road, hold up a placard.
Absolutely.
This is Gatwick, what you were talking about. With people just walking.
Look at them just walking over.
Why would you not kick that out?
I mean, I must confess, if that was me, I would have been hitting them pretty hard in the head with my suitcase while I was walking through. I would. I'd be dragging it through, whacking them with it as I went.
Do you know what would be fun?
Of complete idiots.
What about if you turned up with a great big sort of spray can of orange paint and sprayed them orange? How do you like it?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be
Give them a taste of their own medicine.
Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's spray them. Give them a taste of their own medicine.
I've always believed that if you want to glue yourself to something, just leave them there. I've said this before. If you want to glue yourself to the road, put some cones around them, turn them into a roundabout. Just leave them there.
Remember the French? Remember those French coppers just yanking them?
Yeah, but I wouldn't yank them. Just leave them.
Did
drive
you see
around
that
them.
bit of footage I think it was in Germany, I'm not sure, might not have been, where they were having this Just Stop Oil thing.
Yes.
And two guys got out of their cars, quite big guys, round the back of the neck, threw them onto the pavement. And they were really getting very upset. You can't do this to us, and blah, blah, blah. They kept picking them up, throwing them out, dragging them by their legs.
Quite right. That's
if
exactly
you're going
what
to
should
get in
happen.
our way...
Yeah, if you want to be an obstruction, then we have every right to remove you by whichever means possible.
We we all know that when they blocked those roads, the M25 and all that, people didn't get to hospital, people didn't get to work. You can't disrupt other people's lives on that basis.
No, exactly
There was a video done of their training days where...
What?
They have training days?
They have training days where they
training
teach
to be
you...
planks.
Yeah, basically. They teach you, well, not to be planks and rigid, but to be floppy.
Yeah.
They teach you how to be floppy so that it's really hard for them to pick you up and move
I find
you.
a taser stops that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm not into beating the hell out of them, but I feel like we could use a little bit more force to move them out of the way.
If they go in front of my car, I'm sorry.
I mean, we live in an era now where it's like, oh no, we can't touch them and pick them up because that might be called sexual assault or something.
What about a machine gun? That'd be better than a taser, wouldn't it?
Even I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. Obviously, we
It's
don't
a joke,
violence.
folks.
It's a joke. It's a funny programme. As Georgie said, have a sense of humour, for heaven's sake. Don't complain about it. Georgie, over to you.
Hiya, sorry.
City of London.
City of London Corporation, this isn't really that funny, though. There was a lovely lady, she's not the plank, City of London Corporation is the plank, called Anna Landry. Very impressive young lady. She's gone to the White House, the Brazilian National Congress. She's been Teen Vogue 21 under 21 for disability campaigning. She's in a wheelchair.
All right.
And so she was given the freedom of the City of London, which means she can now get her sheep, by the way, across London Bridge without paying a toll.
Right.
I didn't know that.
Good luck in the traffic, I must say.
I know.
It take a long time.
Exactly. But, that is what she's now... She's in good company, Lord Nelson. So she went to Mansion House to pick up her certificate and award or whatever it is. Unfortunately, she couldn't go on stage to receive it because there were stairs, not a ramp.
Brilliant.
There's a problem with that. She's there because she's a disability campaigner in a wheelchair, and no one had bothered to arrange a ramp. They said to her, there is a ramp there, don't worry about it. Apparently, it transpires there was actually a ramp, but one of the organisers, had decided that she probably wouldn't want to go up anyway.
Oh, right.
So she was very upset, and she said, I've got freedom of the city, but I don't have freedom of the room.
I think we've got a little clip of what she had to say.
Giving us awards while not allowing us access to the stage, to dignity, is really wrong.
An awards night at Mansion House should have been memorable for all the right reasons. For Anna, it didn't turn out that way.
I was set to get granted the freedom of the City of London, which I was really, really excited about, and then there was no ramp for me to get it on the stage.
It's not just rude, but it's actually, I understand, it's slightly illegal, because you have to provide access.
I'm quite surprised, actually. That
reasonable adjustment.
Well, yeah, because most buildings now...
Yeah, you have to, under disability law. So it's a slap in the face. She's a very impressive lady. Read some of her stuff about policy, disability policy. It's very, very good stuff. But it is also, and she wrote an article for The Big Issue, which highlighted some of the awful things in London that she has to go through and other disabled people have to go through. It's an eye-opener, let's put it that way. So,
absolutely.
Plank of the week.
Bad news for the City of London freedom types. Absolutely nonsensical. What a bunch of planks. Coming up, though, we're going to have the final nomination from me, and it's a mayor of a place I didn't even know had a mayor, actually, and it's absolutely ridiculously funny as well. Also, I'll be deciding who should actually win overall. It's all coming up next. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. You're going to be very surprised when I tell you this next plank, because I think I certainly didn't know this. You may have known it. But Hackney, which is a borough in London, apparently has its own mayor.
They go around with chains on.
Well, this one's called Caroline. Well, this one doesn't go around with chains on.
Oh, OK.
This one is modelled more, I would say, on Sadiq Khan. So it's
a
not
modern mayor.
It's not a regimental mayor. No, I would understand if there was a regimental mayor of Hackney. Somebody who sat and wore a load of chains and wore some stupid hat every now and again. I'm talking about Caroline Woodley. Have a look at this.
We've launched Thinking Spaces, a pioneering programme addressing the impact of racism on mental health. And we've established a new charter on race and special educational needs and disabilities, creating a more inclusive future for every child in Hackney.
If you're going to tell me that they needed somebody like that in Hackney, I'm going to tell you that you are as much of a...
But they're local councillors. They're always local councillors.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
But they've set aside quite a lot of money, and they've gone into a partnership with something called Found Me Therapeutic Counselling. and you saw those little kind of spaces that they're going to create in Hackney. Now, Hackney, if you know it, is quite a sort of urban area.
It's got a very nice park called Victoria Park and loads of space to go.
Yes, it has.
It's a nice area.
But these spaces are not going to be made in Victoria Park. These spaces are going to be made on the streets. And there's going to be those little things that look a bit like human brains, where you can go and sit and think. Well, because we want you to think.
So what are you going to do in these
Here's what they want you to do. It aims to create safe spaces for discussing and dealing with the emotional impact of systemic racism on residents' mental health. This project is a direct response to recent events of systemic racism which have profoundly impacted upon black and global majority children. This is a new phrase, by the way, global majority children. Yeah, I think we've got a picture of the think spaces. There we are. You're supposed to sit there by the side of the road where there's an awful lot of fumes coming from the car.
And just think.
You can sit near it.
Think about racism. There's no one there.
Think about racism.
You just sit and
Just sit and think about racism.
I went on Hackney's website and I read about this global majority children thing.
Yeah.
The thinking spaces...
This is a new one, isn't it?
...will help people talk about how discrimination in the past and racism today have created an urgent need for action.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds like they're trying to incite something.
Yeah.
Go think
What exactly
you need to have
do they
some
mean?
urgent action.
Yeah, urgent action.
What are they talking about?
What do they want to do?
Well, what is that?
They're giving
it
it
looks like
I think it's meant to look like a human brain.
Is it?
And I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. But they're spending
more
public.
like a raspberry
They're spending
than a
public.
Looks like a big raspberry. Yeah, you're right.
They're spending public
Albino
money on it,
raspberry.
and it's meant to make you think about racism.
Let's
There
not
is a
forget-
lot of racism about at the moment.
There is.
About having a pale skin.
Well, funnily enough, that's white, that piece of furniture there. I wonder
But
if
you
that's
know,
part of it.
being called gammon or being told
But I
you
would
are
have
from
thought that they would have preferred... I just looked at some of the poverty statistics of Hackney, as you do, and I think it's something like 38%
quite a
something in
poor
poverty.
borough.
One would think that that would be what would concern them more, I imagine, sorting that out than past historical racism and urgent need for action.
I've got some more here. We're working to change how people view fighting racism by highlighting the importance of mental health.
Oh, for goodness sake.
I don't know. This project
Can this mental
shows...
health thing please be knocked on the head for a while?
Well,
mental health is a problem that people
Are you feeling
do suffer
okay,
from.
James?
No, I'm getting mentally really wound up.
I think your mental health is at
My
risk.
mental health issue is really worrying me.
Mental health and racism.
Maybe you need
two
to relax in
obsessions.
the thinking pod, James.
Yeah.
Scourge of our age, mental health and racism. Everyone's obsessed with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so fed up of people telling us Brits that we're all racist. I mean, we are one of the least racist countries in the world. Go to some other countries in Europe. They're way more racist.
Check out
than we are.
America.
Yeah. Or
You know,
France.
and you've just
or
told
Spain.
us-
France, they're really racist.
Spain.
there.
Try Spain.
Yeah.
Blimey.
I mean,
they
you've
were
just
still
told us,
making monkey
Georgie.
noises at Lewis Hamilton when they had the Spanish Grand Prix a few years ago. Yeah.
Jesus.
You've just told us, Georgie, about the poverty statistics. Sounds like there are a lot of people in poverty there. And I think what often happens is, let's say you see someone homeless on the street and you're thinking, they might mug me, they're looking like they're up to no good, I'm going to cross the other side of the road. That's got nothing to do with the colour of their skin, yet people will spin it as if it is, when actually the core problem here is poverty.
Yeah.
It's the same in the United States. A lot of the time there's huge division economically between black communities and white communities. And a lot of the tension between is about, you know, people crossing the road to stay away from someone who looks like they might mug you because they are in severe poverty, as opposed to the colour of their skin. And we need to stop telling everyone that they're racist in this country. It's a waste of our time and a waste of
And
our
I
money.
don't know what anything like this would do. I mean, how is it going to change anything? Because you sit down and next to a big, strange-looking white piece of furniture, and you think about racism.
It ticks a box.
No, but that
Someone's
woman...
consulted that council and said, oh, this would be really good.
Caroline
Great,
Woodley.
tick a box.
So why don't we
That
ask
woman,
this
Caroline,
question that everybody's
it's all
too
about
frightened
her.
to
Yeah.
ask?
She's signalling her...
Hang on.
Yes.
Ask this question. Everybody's too frightened to ask it. Why is the majority of crime committed, particularly in the big cities, by people from minorities?
I don't know the answer to that.
Racist.
Oh, well,
I don't know.
Remember that the Met Police, they decided that they were going to scrap their gangs matrix and get rid of a whole load of data on gangs because in it...
racist.
Well, apparently I think it was 90% of the people on the matrix were black, and so they just presumed, oh, that must be because we're racist as police and we just pick on the black guys.
That must be it. Well, we've got a lot of good nominees today. We've got, you know, I like the Lamborghini lawyer. I like Just Stop Oil. I quite like Rachel Reeves as well. I think, though, it's going to go to the Olympics, hasn't it? Because it's the Olympics that really has been the big dominating plankery story of the week.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the opening ceremony, the continuing nonsense of, as you said, having that guy who's a child rapist playing for the Dutch team in some way, shape, or form.
Sewage swimming.
Yeah, sewage swimming. You know, men beating up women.
Yeah.
You know,
beating up women.
continual rain. Beheadings.
Yeah.
Cardboard
What is
beds.
that about?
They ran out of
Bloke
food
comes
for
in
the
and
athletes
punches
as well.
a woman.
The Brits had to bring in their own private chef because they were running out of food for the athletes in the Olympic Village.
It's a shambles.
The
It's a
whole
French
thing
shambles.
is
Le Shambles.
Le Shambles.
Le Shambles.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Shambles.
Thank you of the week to President Macron and the Olympics in France. Well done. Thank you, James. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Georgie. Thank you, Kevin. We'll see you next time on Plank of the Week.